You came to me and asked when are we gonna get married? And I said, well, I still have a few things I wanna get done professionally first. And Chrissy came to me and she said, but why can't we do that together?
We used to kind of proudly say, oh, we're Cafeteria Catholics. We just pick and choose what we wanna do.
Like there's this new push online, just all the health and all the discipline. And I love to see it, but then in the bedroom, throw it all out the window is what it seems like.
I've seen women really brush off men quickly. Oh, this was a red flag, this was a red flag. I said, I don't know if that was necessarily a red flag or just he wasn't perfect. That is something I do struggle with to this day. I can't lie and say these other thoughts don't seep in.
They were self-professed cafeteria Catholics, picking and choosing what they wanted to believe while still showing up to church every week. But marriage and the question of fertility raised doubts and opened them up to discovering more about God's plan for their lives. Welcome back to the Lila Rose Show. Today I'm sitting down with my lovely guest, Chrissy Horton. You'll remember her from her episode a few weeks back, but this time we're also joined by her husband, Tim. Tim is going to share his perspective as a husband on questions of family size, following God's plan, fertility, and Chrissy and Tim together will discuss their journey of getting closer to Jesus Christ and his teachings in their marriage as they are open to life. We discuss a lot of hot button topics, which I think are incredibly important for today's Christians and non-Christians alike. If you enjoy these conversations and want to see more of them, please don't forget to subscribe. The channel continues to grow. Thankfully, we're almost at 400,000 subscribers. Thanks to all of you. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you like this video. Also, if you're listening on podcast app, make sure you're subscribed over there. Leave us 5 stars and a review. That also helps the show grow. Tim and Chrissy Horton, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to see you again, Chrissy. And I'm so glad you're here, Tim. It's awesome to have you in studio. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, I'm glad to be here.
It's great because we had a lot of people requesting to hear from you when we had Chrissy and I had our conversation. And one of my favorite things to do on the show is to have married couples on because I think their perspective is so incredibly helpful to people and inspiring. So thanks for doing this.
Sure.
Thank you so much for having us.
Chrissy is a content creator extraordinaire. Love what you're doing, Chrissy. So many women are being benefited by what you're doing. Thank you. And men are being touched.
Thank you.
Tim, you are moonlighting on Chrissy's social media and now here on the podcast. Thank you for being willing to join. What is your professional background?
Yeah, so I'm a software developer. I've been doing that for about 20 years. And I ended up getting involved in startups. And it was, before Chrissy and I got married, I came to you one day, you brought up marriage and I said, I absolutely want to marry you, but
We really should preface how young I was when I brought this up to him. I think I was 20. I was still in college.
Yeah.
I was like, why aren't we getting married? No, not really. But we were young. We were very young and we were both in school. Okay. I think that's
very good. Okay. But you came to me and asked when are we going to get married? And I said, well, I still have a few things I want to get done professionally first. And Chrissy came to me and she said, but why can't we do that together? And that really made me think. I thought, that was a beautiful moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, we're going to be going on this journey together and we're going to build so much more than just, whether it's a bank account, we're going to build this beautiful family and we're going to build this life together. And so that was a big moment. And Chrissy pushed for me to actually start going to some local meetups and things like that. And so I went to this startup weekend. We built a company in a weekend. And then we tried to turn that into a successful company. It didn't work out, but I ended up networking a bunch of people and then dove further into kind of just software and the San Diego startup scene. So,
and it sounds like you've been pretty successful. You've had a few companies that have done well, and
we've had some companies.
You're semi-retired now, or?
Well, yeah, we'll see. I'm going to take a little break as of now and support Chrissy, and then work on homeschooling with kids. But we have some flexibility as of now.
He's very good. He's very successful.
Hey, I have a startup. Can I hire you?
He's very good. I think he's the coding master, especially even with my business. I'm like, can you do this? And I'll just, I'll pull, I don't know anything about coding. And I'm like, oh, just make it look like this and do this and do that. And then he just, I think he's the master coder, but he made really smart decisions early on. You had some foresight on some ways you had some foresight into some of the companies that you founded and started, and he would write the software for this and it's given him this ability to have the flexible schedule he has now.
Yeah. That's kind of the dream, is to be home with the kids more too, right? I want to see them more, not less. So.
There were lots of sacrifices to get here, but that was always the goal, was for you to be able to have your time be more of your own.
I think even that just comment, like you want to be home with the kids more. And I know obviously, Chrissy, you and I, we want to be home with the kids as much as we can and make our work accommodate that. Right. And I think there is a cultural narrative. There's both like the girl boss cultural narrative, which is like men and women are the same. Women should just go and men should just go work, 10 hours and be insane and, build these careers or whatever. And by 10 hours, I mean like they should work these like very intense work weeks in offices away from their families, which again, I'm not saying some people who do that, there isn't a plan God has, and sometimes there's necessity. So I'm not trying to disparage those sorts of careers or the importance of, putting in work and all of these things. Anyways, all that to say, I think the view though of men traditionally more is they're outside of the home, bringing home the bacon. The woman is in the home. We've on the show done a number of series of podcasts debunking a lot of those myths about this idea of very differentiated roles to the degree that the man's away and the woman is here. And they're just away from each other, because I don't think that's necessarily traditional. Anyways, but I love what you're saying about you want to be with your kids. You're obviously a man's man, but you want to be with your children. And I do think there is this tendency to minimize the importance of a father in the home.
Yeah. I work from home these days, and sometimes Chrissy will take the kids away for the day, and I end up calling them like, "Hey, when you guys coming home?" And I miss you guys, right? Because I'm so used to being with my family, right? And so, I love it. That's kind of, that was the goal, and so we're kind of there.
And we're well aware of the tremendous blessing that is, and not everyone has that opportunity. And so while that's the dream, I know that's not everyone's privileged with that. So there's nothing wrong, like you said, like a man who goes and works, long days to provide for his family so his wife can stay home. I think that's so beautiful. And the children see that sacrifice, and there's lots of different ways. But yeah, the fact that you have this successful career with these flexible hours, and in that flexibility, you want to be with your family is, I think, the key point here.
Yeah.
Right.
You both have 6 kids. Chrissy was sharing about your transformation as a couple to be open to life, getting more passionate about your faith. I think the man's perspective is so incredibly powerful, because a lot of men today, I think, are told that they should not be open to life, or that even marriage isn't necessarily a good thing. There's a lot of mixed messages about marriage, fertility, children, everything for men. So have you always been strong in your faith, Tim? What has been your faith journey? And then we'll get into the marriage, fertility, all of the other fun topics.
I was strong in my faith when I was younger. Really, when I was very active in youth group, my core group of friends, they were all very devout Catholics. We had a band that was, it was not a Christian band or anything like that, but we all played by the same rules. We listened to what we were taught. Then after high school, that's when my friends changed a little bit, and it's not like my friends were bad people, but I became more of a sinner at that point. Drinking became just the norm, and I justified it as this is what college people do. And so I almost kind of invented my own religion, like, well, it's okay because this is just what people my age do. So I'm sure, it'll be fine. And that's kind of something like I've realized through time that, when we bend the rules, we're making our own religion. And that's been what's brought me so close to being open to life, so much more into being open to life is like, I'm not in a position to make these rules for myself. And if I truly believe the faith, then I need to play by these rules. And there's they benefit me, even if I don't like it in a way, or if it makes it difficult. I've come to love all the rules, right? I think they're great. They're there for a reason. But yeah, definitely in college, I strayed. And even when Chris and I started dating, I mean, we were not, I wouldn't say we're good Catholics. We probably should not have been receiving the Eucharist at all for a while. And that's something we learned later that,
What do you mean?
Just because the mortal sins, you look at the 10 Commandments and you're like, well, we didn't commit adultery, but there's other layers to that commandment. And so we should have gone to confession more. We should have been purer, I guess, or however you want to put it.
Well, we didn't wait for marriage.
We didn't
wait for marriage. So we were in that. We would go out partying and
drink too much and that kind of stuff.
And that was something more too. I spoke on that in the last one. You couldn't, I think, convince us at that time in our lives. Maybe the premarital sex, we could probably be like, we shouldn't do that. But again, got very wrapped up. and what's deemed normal
Yeah.
in our culture, especially for young people in their early 20s. So that, and the Eucharist, I mean, that was something I learned more recently in my life, you know, because that's the thing. You look at the 10 commandments, like, well, I didn't kill anyone and I didn't commit adultery. But when you look at the commandment of committing adultery, it's not just
Cheating.
It's not just an affair, right? There's there's premarital sex, all these other things. And so,
Yeah, we learned.
yeah, we learned. And then but in terms, I mean, I think when it comes to the Eucharist, I don't want to discourage people with that one, because I remember looking at things, so, well, I can never receive the Eucharist because I'm constantly, you know, we're all sinners. And, but there were times I think, and I don't know if I should admit this on the podcast, but like I would go out on like a Saturday night and I would drink, and then I'd come and I'd go to church and not like think anything of that, even if I was like a little hungover or something. I mean, I was functioning. It wasn't like I was coming in drunk, but.
Well, I think drinking to like feeling a little bit tipsy, I don't know that that's mortal sin.
See, I don't know. I'm still learning. That's why I don't want to take what we say as
you should generally avoid it, but a little bit is not. It's just like, having fun. But like beyond that, then you're getting into serious territory.
Because we would still lead the choir. Like, I mean, we obviously were like, fine. Like we would like come in and like get our stuff done. So it wasn't bad, but you know, the night before we weren't, you know.
Right. So you knew each other at church. You were living your faith, you know, you cared about it, but then you go to college, things started to get a little more shaky. When did you and Chrissy first start dating?
I was earning my master's and you were working on your undergrad, and I saw you on campus, right? And we passed, and then.
So you saw her and you're like, she's cute and she looks familiar. Oh, okay. I know her kind of from church.
Yeah, exactly. And then we saw each other again at church, right? And then that's how you kind of asked me out.
I did not ask you out. Get out of here.
No, we just set up some time, and so we went and grabbed lunch together after class one day. See, the problem with me is I tell the story in one sentence with not a whole lot of detail.
Yes.
And Chrissy likes to...
Oh, I don't just like to tell the story. I have a whole series on my social medias, and it's a 20-part episode of our story.
I love how Tim just boils it down to, she asked me out. And you're like,
I did not. Why did
I know that was a joke.
was
she didn't really ask me
It was
out.
a joke.
Yeah.
Wait, so now I gotta ask. How did you ask her? How did you get connected for that first date?
Okay. Okay, I'll tell this part.
You better.
Okay. So we saw each other on campus, and that's when he said something registered differently. He looked at me differently. But it was actually another year, I think, before we saw each other again. Because we went to the same school, but I went and lived on campus. Yeah. And so I unfortunately stopped going to church. As we talked about this in the last podcast, where I just kind of had that very typical secular American experience in college. And at the time, I was in a previous relationship of someone of a different faith. And he went on a mission because he was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So he left, and I was very sad. And my mom was like, you need to find a good Catholic boy. Like, I said, no. I'm going to convert and be with this guy.
The Mormons.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And so she was really pushing for me to get back to church. And
she's like, what about the Justin Timberlake of our parish?
She always used to make jokes about that, though. She said, one day you're going to marry that Tim Horton boy. I kid you not. I said,
really?
Yeah. And she goes, you're young now, but one day. She always would joke about that.
Wait, did your mother ever talk about Chrissy or?
She didn't really know.
My mom actually went to a different parish. Oh, okay. So when I joined the youth choir at the parish that Chrissy's referring to, I left the parish that my parents were going to. Okay. They preferred their other church there. And this one had more kids at it, more youth. That's where I met my band, all that kind of stuff.
So she brings me to church, actually to meet someone else, another Catholic boy.
Actually, one of my friends from...
one of your good friends.
Yeah.
And he wasn't there. And, but I see Tim, and I've always had a crush on Tim. Always. And I see him, and it's like the first time I think since that interaction on campus. I mean, if you really want to get into it, after that interaction on campus, I called my mom. I was like, Mom, I just ran into Tim Horton. And I was like flustered. I couldn't catch my breath. But I had this other boyfriend. She's like, why are you flustered over Tim Horton when you're going to go marry and convert and be another religion? Like, wow. She's like, kind of, and I don't know. You're right. I don't know. I like hang up, That boyfriend met Tim. He was really cool. Like he came to my church too. And so one time he came to my church and he met Tim. He shakes his hand and we're leaving the church. And he goes, yeah, you're going to leave me for him when I go on my mission.
Stop it. Wow.
And I go, oh, no, of course not. But in my head, I'm like, you think I have a chance? Like,
No, he was more like, yeah, Tim was definitely checking out my girlfriend just now.
No, I guess I don't know. I didn't see the time, but and I tell a story, and some people get really mad at us. We're like, how could you be? But I didn't end up marrying that guy.
Yeah.
And Tim just had that effect on me. I don't know what to tell people.
Meant to
you
be.
know, it just had that effect. It's not like I went and talked to him or anything. We didn't have each other's numbers. We never even spoke. But I just feel like there were these little tangents of like connection in some way that I couldn't see at the time.
Tim, when did you first see Chrissy as someone maybe I could marry? Was that one on the campus, or was that at church when you saw her the next time?
I guess it's mostly on the campus. There, like at some retreats and things like that. We always got along. We spoke a lot, and me, I guess, forward thinking. I was like, one day I could absolutely see me marrying, Chrissy. But we were both just so young at that point. Yeah. But yeah, I guess for a while, even before that meeting on the college campus.
Yeah, when I was older, before that meeting, I remember you said at a retreat, there was something where it was like an exercise to think about like your future spouse, and you said I came to mind.
How sweet.
So there's just little things, that we couldn't explain that connected us in some way.
So a lot of couples that I've heard their stories where they find each other, they fall in love, they get married, and then there's like this faith journey or this kind of conversion process where they really just change the way they see the world, the way they see their marriage, even children, everything else. I've heard a lot of different stories. I've heard stories where the spouses have the experiences separately, and it actually creates some sort of a tension in the marriage, and then they have to figure out what to do. Or occasionally, but more rarely, they have it really together, and it's actually part of their intimacy building process. Was your experience, Tim, that your process was together of falling deeper in love with faith, or was there some actually disagreements along the way?
I think it was together. We kind of, there's things at the time that we didn't like about the faith, and we both didn't like them. But we went on that journey together, and I think it's really helped strengthen our relationship. It's things are more special now than ever.
So you were, the good Catholic boy, go to college, kind of drift a little bit, partying. You start dating Chrissy. At what point did you start having a check in your spirit that said, okay, I'm not following God's law here. I'm just sort of being Catholic on Sunday and then not the rest of the week.
That's kind of when we came to this spiritual awakening together, right? I don't think it was until like 2020, somewhere around that time, really. We raised our kids in the faith. We would read to them. We would teach them scripture the best we could. But not until around COVID, I guess, is when we really started to dig deeper in our faith. That was after we had our fourth, and you discussed this on the last podcast.
We didn't have him yet. We had him.
Oh, I guess.
But this is the start of the journey of being open to life, and that was both of our story was that this whole learning about being open to life and having more kids is what drove us down this path of being stronger in our faith.
And it's funny, around that time, I remember going to confession for the first time in a while, and our pastor, he looks at me. I confess everything. He's like. And I told him, oh, yeah, I've been playing guitar in the choir for 20 years at this other church. I actually played the church we go to now, our parish. I used to play there a long time ago as well. He's like, what happened? When did you fall off? What changed? And, he's glad to have me back, really come back home in a way. But it was just, it was crazy to me that I lived for so long thinking that I was being Catholic, but I really wasn't. We were just kind of doing our own thing, making our own rules. And, so anyways, that after that confession, he told me, wow, that was a really good confession. And I was like, okay, hopefully that.
It's a great compliment from a priest.
I think so.
What was your, and we're going to kind of go through the story more in a moment, and then also talk about kind of, the world's perspective on this stuff, including recent internet controversy on our episode, Chrissy, and also a ton of positive feedback. But I am curious what you said you were reading scripture to the kids, you were singing in the choir. In your innermost heart, the innermost part of your heart, in your prayer, what kind of sense did you get? Just like God loves me, and maybe there was some just blindness or naivete, a lack of formation, and you're just kind of going a certain direction? Or was there a deep unrest? What was going on deepest inside of your heart, if you can share?
I think for us, we used to kind of proudly, I hate this, say, oh, we're Cafeteria Catholics. We just pick and choose what we want to do. And that seems to be kind of like Cafeteria Catholic. I didn't come up with that, right? That's like a running joke. And so I think there's some things, and maybe it's because the religion's so, so old and everything. And so we think, oh, it's just out with the times. I know for me, my parents, they're divorced and my dad went to a megachurch. So I got exposure, and then, I dated this other guy. And so I had exposure to all these different religions. So I think at least for me, it was like, oh, there's not one way, right? There's all these different ways. And so I was more like lukewarm. And I think that kind of was with you too a little bit. You may not have had the same religious experiences, but it was a little lukewarm. So in terms of conviction was with the kids, we pray, obviously by the time we had kids, we weren't partying and stuff. But
some of the stuff, I mean, the drinking, drinking too much, I think it still happened a little bit.
When you go on vacation or something with our friends, like not with the kids.
Yeah. With the kids,
back when we had not as many, we'd go out with our friends.
Or just like the content you consume too, like, and what that does to your thoughts and things like that. So I think I was just naive about the whole thing. I always was going to be Catholic. My mom was very devout. She had me doing rosaries when I was 5 and 6 years old, kind of thing. So my dad just recently converted. So we're really excited about that. But I just always knew I would marry a Catholic. I was going to always be Catholic. But I was a little naive to the rules and what's the right way to live.
I think at least for me, and this might have been how you were feeling too, especially with my experience in a mega church, is as long as you have a relationship with Christ. Yeah. That's a big thing. As long as you have a relationship with Christ, you don't need a building. You don't need to, the Eucharist, I'm literally just learning not just learning, but truly understanding. Because we talked about this in the last podcast, that a lot of Catholics think it's symbolic. Yeah. And
they don't realize this is really Jesus.
And I knew it wasn't, but it wasn't comprehending with me. But it's really hard. And it wasn't until our boys started making their first communion did we really dig into it. And it forced me to really try to understand the Eucharist more. And I think that was with you too, though. It was just as long as we have a relationship with God. So yeah, that's why we would read Bible stories to our children, because we want them to have a relationship with Christ. But I don't think we looked at the rules as a form of freedom. We looked at it. They're kind of give or take, right? That's all, that's just for the really hardcore Catholics, right?
I think it didn't even occur to me that I was sinning is the problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? It just didn't even register. Yeah.
So at what point did you have a sense of a realization of these contraception, let's just use that. Contraception is not okay. It actually violates the marriage. It's not for the marriage. It's not part of God's plan. And I know we talked about this a little bit, but I'm very curious from the male perspective, how that even hit and what that thought process was like.
That one I always knew. But for whatever reason, I thought the faith will come around or whatever, right? The vasectomy will be okay one day. Everybody's doing it. So that was my thinking there. And not until we dug more into it and the beauty of our intimacy and of life, and we have all these kids, and did it really start to make more sense to me and how beautiful and how great it is to be open to life.
In case anyone didn't catch the last podcast, I was on contraceptives our whole relationship, even after marriage. And it wasn't until I got pregnant, right before I got pregnant, obviously, that I stopped. That was one I actually didn't know, but maybe I just took more of the path you did too, that if in some way I did know, I just thought, the church come around.
They'll figure it out eventually. I do know a lot of Catholics, a lot is maybe the wrong word, but I do know of Catholics personally too, that disagree with the church's teachings on very core moral issues that have been there for thousands of years, but then they still want to practice the faith, which is a beautiful desire. It's beautiful, but then they're just not willing to submit on these issues, and they're just expecting the church to eventually change its mind.
Well, I was going to say, and I feel for them because we're actually kind of taught, we talked about this, that you're irresponsible to have a lot of children. One, there's this whole argument, you can't give them enough attention. 2, what if you're not financially able to? 3, you're hurting the environment. That is very loud. That's very loud in our culture. And so I understand, and 2 of us growing up in the Catholic Church, still super unfamiliar with a lot of things. I can imagine why a lot of practicing Catholics may still use contraceptives, because I truly don't know. I think the church needs to be more vocal about it, to be honest. And maybe that goes down to just what your local priest is preaching. But I don't feel like that was something that was really widely discussed. Maybe it's discussed once in your confirmation class, but I couldn't even tell you what I learned in my confirmation class as a 15-year-old with all these other teens. So I think I have a lot of sympathy because the finance one's a big one too, right? You know, they're just trying to do what's responsible, or they're stretched thin with the kids they do have.
One thing I want to talk about is after we discovered being open to life and how that's going to be part of our life no matter what. I hope the church never changes their stance on it, right? But in the event that if they did, for whatever reason, we would not start using contraceptives, right? We're just that's the right way to live for us right now, forever. And again, I don't think the church will. I remember seeing headlines, years ago that, this is the right time for the church to change their stance. Right. I hope I never see a headline like that again.
The media wants to trick people into thinking the church will change on these fundamental natural law principles, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So when we were talking about the journey of, the evolution of understanding the deeper teachings of the church and being open to life and everything else, what has been the biggest thing that has surprised you about each other in that process?
I keep coming back to openness to life. And how you've actually there's been times where I said, well, maybe we could just, skirt the rules this one time. And you're like, no, that's not how it's going to go.
I feel like you've held the line better than
I guess we've gone back and forth on it sometimes, but that surprises me because,
that I've held the line sometimes?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. Sometimes with that kind of thing. And because, being intimate is about procreation, and we might end up with I hope one day we end up with a seventh, but it just might not be on the timeline, you envisioned.
Yeah.
But we're open to that, and your openness to it has been, it's great to see. It's reassuring and gives me more confidence in the whole process too.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because there's times where you're really holding the line and he'll hold the line, and then there's times where I'll hold it, and I think that just shows we're holding each other up in times where we feel weak, maybe. Oh yeah, but I usually go with, what you say. And so, I guess that is a little surprising that I'm like, no, this is how it's supposed to be. So, but also I want to make it very clear. I mean, you can make this clear that this is a very mutual decision. And so
what is a mutual decision?
The openness to life and how we are
no
intimate.
Contraception,
no contraceptives, no pulling out, I don't know, withdrawal. That probably might be better. No withdrawal. No withdrawal method.
Will you just interrupt us or something?
Yeah, I think that is what it's called.
And just for folks listening who are like, what? what am I listening to right now? The church's teaching on this, which is so beautiful, and I believe it's the natural law on this, is that sex is designed to be open to life and for the potential for procreation as well as unity. And so any sexual act needs to have openness to life as well as unity between the spouses. So it's about loving each other, and then it's about being open to life. So that's why contraception or pulling out or masturbation or orgasm, especially I should say ejaculation specifically outside of the marital embrace, is seen as against the natural order. And when you think about it really simple, it's like, sex at the end of the day is about coming together, one flesh, physically. That is the ultimate end. You can enjoy yourselves up until that point. Obviously, and there's a lot of personal intimacy that's involved and personal preferences and everything else. But the end goal is we're going to become one flesh and be open to life in the one flesh moment, even if we're not fertile at this time, but we would still be open to life. And that is maybe one of the more simple ways to say it, although it can probably be said better than how I just said it.
No, you word everything beautifully.
I also look at it as not objectifying you, right? Our faith tells us how to live. People who don't have that faith, I like to find ways that they might relate to it, and then bring them into the faith, that ideally. But when one person is just getting the pleasure out of it, even if you say you like serving your husband, it still feels like objectification to me, excuse me. I'm using you as an ends to a means kind of thing. And that just doesn't sit right with me either.
Our 3-year-old son loves to eat meat. And he really loves the meat that we get every month from GoodRanchers.com. GoodRanchers.com is American meat delivered. It is the highest quality beef products, chicken, pork, fish that is sourced here in the United States, mostly from small family ranchers and farms. I love these products because they are really the best on the market. They're the most delicious, tender, juicy steaks. The chicken is flavorful and moist. It's not that stringy, dry, rubbery chicken that you get from the grocery store. In fact, the Good Ranchers chicken is my favorite product there. The steaks are amazing too, but they say you go for the steak and then you leave for the chicken. If you go to GoodRanchers.com today and subscribe to one of their delicious monthly boxes, you will get $25 off your first order, as well as fast and free shipping. And if you use the code Lila, you'll get an additional $40 off your order. Also, if you get the monthly subscription, you will also get your choice of free bonus meat for life. So go to GoodRanchers.com today and don't forget to use the code Lila at checkout for an additional $40 off your first order of American meat delivered from GoodRanchers.com. My favorite diaper and wipes company is EveryLife. EveryLife is what we use in my household. It is truly the best product on the market. The diaper is not only constructed in a beautiful and simple way that is comfortable for your baby and of the best materials, but it also is free of harsh chemicals. And it also is leak proof and lasts all the way through the night for your little one. We use their diapers, we use their wipes, we use their pull-ups, and now we are using their travel wipes, which I'm so excited about because we were just traveling. If you go to everylife.com today and you join their Changing Lives Club, you will get a subscription monthly to diapers and wipes of your choice. You'll get 15% off. You'll get a free box of diapers and wipes donated to a mom and baby in need. You'll get your fun tote bag. And if you use the code Lila10 at checkout, you'll get an additional 10% off your order. Enjoy EveryLife as much as I do and help change your baby while you change the world. A huge thank you to our sponsor, We Heart Nutrition. We Heart Nutrition is America's premier pro-life, family-owned supplement company. These supplements are made in their most bioavailable form for your body for easy absorption and digestion. When I remember to take my vitamins, I feel it. I feel less brain fog, especially when I take the magnesium supplement. And when I forget to take my vitamins, I feel it. And they have a new product over at We Heart Nutrition that I'm excited about. If you know somebody who is concerned about their bone density or their bone health, there's a specific product for your bone health. It's for men and women ages 40 and older. Go to WeHeartNutrition.com right now and take their 20-second survey to find out the best supplement package for you that is specialized for wherever you are in your life, wherever you are with your health. That's WeHeartNutrition.com. Use the code Lila at checkout for a full 20% off your order. So there was a ton of controversy over the line in the podcast. It actually wasn't even said in the podcast. It was a part of the marketing around the last podcast, Men Don't Need Sex. And we got a lot of feedback, and a lot of people mostly said, yeah, it's true. And women don't either. I mean, it's not a biological need. And there's some people who live very fully alive, happy, contented lives without ever having sex. There are people who've died and have never had sex once in their life and lived life to the fullest. Right. So, but I think it was triggering for some people because they say, well, there's a common theme that some people express and fear about marriage where there's starving. Mm-hmm. The sex is, the couple is starving each other of sex. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of these cases, the woman is blamed for depriving the man. And I've heard of cases where it's the opposite too. And it's not connected to NFP, it's connected to like relational issues. Mm-hmm. I'm curious your take on, I know you were tracking some of the controversy, Tim, that happened and really the dust up. A lot of it was mostly on the platform X, which is known for its crazy controversies. But what was your take on all of that?
Everything was just taken out of context, really, right? Most of the stuff I saw online. But as far as marriage goes, our vows say we need to be open to life and that we're going to try to start a family. And so I think I hate to use the word, you have to have sex, but you kind of have to have sex because you got to try. And even if you don't think you can have babies, you should still try. It brings you two together. Periods of abstinence, Chrissy's commented on this. I think you said this on the podcast too. It also brings us closer together. And then when we can be intimate again, it's just so much better. As far as marriage goes, I think there has to be sex in marriage. Mm-hmm. But you don't need sex in life to be happy. Absolutely, you can have a fulfilling life without ever having intercourse, and then your life is wonderful. Like you said, you live it to the fullest.
I'm not going to judge anyone's intentions, but I think there was a passion to hate on an idea that really triggered folks. And that idea can be that, yes, you don't need sex because the culture is saying constantly you're entitled to sex, you need sex. And if you're in a marriage, your spouse is now your sex object, effectively. Right. I think that is a strong narrative underpinning some of the approaches in parts of Christianity today, that you get married. So then now you have this personal sex object, your spouse that you love, but then you just get sex whenever you want. Right. No. You get sex as a part of loving them and being loved by them. But love is the order, not just I'm seeking pleasure or an outlet.
Yeah. The internet seems to think we don't have sex at all. Well, which is clearly not the case.
The ones who don't know that we have 6 kids.
I'm sorry. The people who clipped some of the
who
podcast,
don't know who we are at all.
But something I saw coming up online quite a bit was, especially when we're trying to, postpartum, absolutely, we're not going to be doing anything. We're just going to be focusing on the baby and taking care of the family, right? That's our focus there. If we're trying not to conceive too soon, we're going to abstain. And I think that also triggered a bunch of people online, especially non-Catholics, because they don't understand, well, pull out condoms, some kind of contraceptive, right? No, we don't do that. We're always open to life. And so if we're not ready now, we're just going to abstain. And I would think that a lot of men would connect with this idea of self-control, right? There's this new push online for, and I love to see it, just all the health and all the discipline, right? People take care of your body, eat right, exercise, work hard for your family, master your craft. But then in the bedroom, throw it all out the window is what it seems like. But no, you can be self-controlled in that situation too, and wait for the right times, wait for the moment that your spouse is also there with you and you can enjoy it together. If you're in the situation where your spouse just doesn't enjoy sex, that's a chance for you guys to maybe learn about each other and explore and figure out why. And maybe your wife or spouse never enjoys it, or it doesn't get that into it. There's still a requirement of it there. So that's something that each couple is going to have to work out, right? It's not, I can't say everyone you have to wait to be in the mood. Right. Sometimes the husband has to get you in the mood, or sometimes I think the wife just, and I guess needs to figure out how to get in the mood. That's kind of the thing.
But there's self-sacrifice in both of this, right? So there's self-sacrifice in, if my wife is going through something or medically healing, obviously I'm going to sacrifice and practice self-control. But if there is something deeper going on with the wife, because this was something that was brought up to me, that I have been, I've lived a very beautiful, blessed life, and I don't take it for granted. And I've had, while I do have regrets of not waiting till marriage, I've had a very healthy look on what intimacy looks like. I've never been sexually assaulted. I didn't have sex too young. And so I would have a very different view than someone who's been through any kind of sexual trauma, right? So for me, we have 6 kids. It's easy for let's do this. It's one of my favorite things to do with you, right? And so, but for someone who has experienced that and they're married and sex is difficult for them, again, yes, obviously, let's work on the deeper issues, connect intimacy, what's going on? Why is this hard for you? But there is again, it is a marriage. There's self-sacrificing maybe on her end too. So we're not saying, I think that was the biggest misconception, that this woman's calling all the shots. This man's needs are totally by the wayside. And that wasn't what we were saying at all. So that, I think that's the clarification, is just that they're self-sacrificing on both ends, and you don't want to have a sexless marriage. And, obviously, if there's not a medical reasoning for this stuff.
Honestly, I think for a lot of women, especially maybe more traditional women or women who have faced wounds, and by traditional, I don't mean that word can be so misunderstood. So what I mean by that is women who are wanting to be more by the book, but maybe they go into excess sometimes. And I do think women may struggle with not being comfortable enough in their own skin, not being playful enough, not getting enough space to be rested and, kind of just at play, quite frankly, to enjoy themselves and enjoy their intimacy with their spouse. So that probably could be a whole other show. Maybe, Chrissy, we could have a show about that. But I'm curious, just based on what you were saying, Tim, about just men and self-control, what would your advice be for men for how to grow in self-control for the purposes of chastity and love and service in dating and marriage?
The content you consume, I think, is huge. Whether it's like pornography or just, scantily clad women, whatever that is, it might be changing, your energy more than you think it is. It's controlling you more than you think it is. that would be my big push, is just make sure you're looking at, be careful about your content diet, that kind of thing. Because I don't think a lot of men, if you're interested in it, you don't have a hard time eating right, or you might not have a hard time exercising. But if you're consuming that kind of content, you're going to have a hard time controlling yourself, I think. And being chaste, or even in marriage, you're going to have, you're going to lust and possibly want your needs to be filled. I'm not thinking about your spouse, not thinking about the unity. So the content, I think, has got a huge part of that.
So you were sharing earlier your experience of that moment when you met the big trucker vans or whatever, the big minivans at church.
Vans.
Yeah, the Sprinter vans at church, and realized like, oh, wow, there's people having 8, 9, 10 kids, and a mindset shift for you on openness to life. And you went home and had this conversation with Tim. I'm curious your experience of Chrissy's experience, and then what was going on in your heart and mind.
Yeah, at that point we started, you commented on this in the podcast, but we hit the internet, started doing a lot of research. And I even half jokingly said, well, maybe we should, become a Protestant or Mormon or something like that, because they can have, their rules are looser and that kind of, but at that point it occurred to me.
You actually discussed that at one point.
Not really.
Okay.
I kind of threw it out there because, a vasectomy is an option.
In every other religion.
Yeah. And pretty much every other religion.
Yeah, not every religion, but all the.
But I was looking at the whole situation wrong, right? Looking at these kids as a burden, when the 3 we had and the 4th who was coming, they've been the best thing that happened to us, and it's not a burden at all. It's a blessing. I feel so much more fulfilled now than I ever did, so, but yeah, also going back to the idea of, trying to bend the faith to fit our lifestyle, but that's not, your faith shouldn't do that. You change your life for your faith. You don't, your faith shouldn't have to bend for you. And that same thing, coming back to the Catholic Church, needs to modernize. No, they don't. People need to just know Jesus and live by his rules, and your life will be better.
So how did you get there, though? So how did you go from, well, let's just go be Protestant. Let's go to this megachurch down the street. It was
doing the research and learning more about the Catholic Church's stance on it. I remember watching a bunch of YouTube videos about it, and being the idea of unity is just so important as well. Like, obviously sex is for procreation, but it together is more powerful, and that moved me. Part of it, and I'm still learning about it and still understanding everything. Part of me just thinks we need to follow the rules. This is not a great attitude, or some people will have an issue with it, but the church put these rules for us, create these rules for us. We should follow them. We should live by them. Because in the long run, what I've found is when I've broken those rules, I've ended up in a bad situation. I've gotten in trouble. I've gotten sick. Whatever happened, if I would have just lived by these rules to start with, my life would be better. I would be further along, even in my career, things like that. I think some of the guys I met at those startups, they were devout Catholics. I didn't realize it at the time, but and they were. Now I'm looking back at them as they're inspirational, right? Because they were still in this. We were up in San Francisco at the time. And one of my coworkers, he always got to Mass on Sunday. And so at that time in my life, I would have been more willing to skip Mass, but seeing him go got me to Mass as well, and Father Mike has I think it must be 5 or 6 years old now, but a clip on being open to life on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And he talks about unity and procreation. And that one, that I think changed both of us, right? We kind of watched that and we understood it more deeply, and we decided to make that really part of our life.
Mm-hmm. And I think learning, like we said, the design of sex too, of not us being used just for fleshly pleasure. Mm-hmm. That was a big one we learned about, and I think that really changed our perspective to it. Mm-hmm. So that was the start, though, because we weren't fully, we were convicted, we made the choice, okay, no more contraceptives, no more of these things, but let's use the Marquette method or whatever. And, we went into that whole on the other podcast of how I ended up getting pregnant. But you were the same way too, when we couldn't believe that I was pregnant because we were following this thing to a T. And then, but he comes and, and it's I cry every time I talk about it, but
that's number 6.
That's number five. And it's
your unexpected baby. Yeah. When you were practicing NFP, and the serious reason was you were recovering from your last birth, and God still gave you this baby. Mm-hmm.
that decision was left to us, we wouldn't have these two beautiful children. And so that's, I think, once he was born.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And as far as being open to life, like it was a transition, right? It wasn't a switch that flipped necessarily. As far as making sure that we are open to life, that was kind of I guess that's just how we're going to live forward. But we resented it a little bit for a little while.
Very much so.
And I'd kind of look at some of my Protestant friends and I get a little jealous, like, look at what you're going out and doing. And I'm living by these rules, but now it's actually flipped. And now I feel like, look at how fulfilled my life is. And I'm not saying my Protestant friends aren't fulfilled, but I get so much joy now out of living this way versus, and it's not like I'm shackled in any way or it's really for my benefit, for my family's benefit. That kind of thing.
You're saying that because you have maybe Protestant friends who are having less kids.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And I see them, they're able to do things we can't do, like travel, fly, RV. It's hard to find RVs for a family our size. And so, but that's okay. You know, life is still so much more meaningful for us with our family than it would be taking a trip out of just taking a trip or flying somewhere or something like that. So, I've learned to love it now. It's I wish we lived this way longer, right? We wish we started having kids sooner.
Yeah, I think that's a big. Also, I mean, you know me and all my millions of disclaimers that it's a very personal story. We're talking about our own journey, but I think that is something I do struggle with to this day. So while I am fully convicted, I can't lie and say these other thoughts don't seep in. You know, there's times. So recently, I just went to Las Vegas to go see the Backstreet Boys, and I thought it would have. I met up with a friend there, but the first night I was alone, and I really just wish Tim could have been there. We have not had a weekend away. I couldn't even tell you last time, probably like 2018. And so, the hospital when we go get when I go give birth.
Love those hospital steaks or whatever they have there.
And so I remember I was sitting there and I called him and I said, "Oh, can we please? I just want to do like a weekend away, just us two." And there are some families I know who have 9 kids and they can manage. The way our kids are at night, we cannot put that on anyone else at this point, or we're just not comfortable with it. Like, I don't think we would enjoy ourselves knowing our kids were just screaming and calling out for mom and dad in the middle of the night. And, you know, maybe that's on us on the way we do the nighttime routine, you know, but that's where we are. So again, I know there's families who have 10 kids and they're able to still, like, they have a village, they have that support, and they're able to go and do mom and dad time. And that's awesome. So I'm not trying to say if you have a big family, that's never happening. This is just,
I think, by the way, I have my brother and sister-in-law, they have 7 under 9, and they do somehow do the getaways.
Yes.
But again, it's a family culture thing, because I have 3, and the idea of doing a getaway with my 3 right now sounds overwhelming because I don't want to leave them at night. So it's a parenting style thing. It's the child. There's so many different factors.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, it's not because we have a big family we can't get out, but yeah, I feel the same way. If we were down to with the first 3, it'd be the same thing. And so but so there were times like that though, when I'm sitting alone in this nice hotel room and just wishing, like, I just want, you know, time. And then I think about this and I get a little, you know, I'm human too. And I love my babies. I would never exchange, but I said, it'd be kind of nice to know if we were done, right? We could be ready to move on to the next chapter. And then, but Tim's like, really? Is that really what you want? Because there's also this massive freedom with being open to life, because I have women who how do you know when you're done having kids? It's the biggest question I get asked. So people who are like new to my page, how do you know when you're done having kids? And I see women, you know, make these videos, or I'll talk to women, and it's quite the burden. That's a big decision to make, right? And it's really weighs on them.
When my husband dies, or my biological clock stops, you know, or just goes fully.
And because we've talked about this, that you know, vasectomies are just the norm in our culture. Yes. So that's what they're going through. Is this when should he get the snip? It's a weight. And I know there's some women who say, "Oh no, I felt like weight was lifted once we made that decision." And I can't attest to their journeys, but I do see this struggle when they have to make this choice. And while sometimes I sit here and I say, wouldn't it be nice to know if we were just done, right? We can move and then we can start planning these things. But then there's such a freedom, because again, I thought I was done with 4. We thought we were done with 4, right? And there's this freedom of like, I don't look at baby number 6 and like get crazy emotional, like, this is the last time I'm going to see the first steps. This is the last time, you know, and it's, I can enjoy everything. And I think there's such a beauty in life, like not knowing what's next. And also when I do get a little down, like, oh, I just want to take a little vacation, which we could do. We need to figure out our nighttime routine. But so it's not like you can't do those things. But when I do
like a month of boot camp.
Yeah.
We're gonna do bedtime routine.
Before number 4, I think that's what your mom did. She came over and
she helped us out to
we would go on date nights, just go down the beach or something, and your mom would do the bedtime routine with the kids, put them all to bed.
try to get them used to it. It didn't work. But that's just our parenting styles and our kids. But anyway, when I get caught up in some of these things that, like, okay, yeah, the vacation is like, would that vacation be worth more than like some of our, having a bigger family? And then I think it's a big thing too of thinking long term too. Like, what's our Thanksgiving table going to look like in 20 years? And so there's, I always say something I've heard it resonated with me and I shared a lot is sacrifice is not a bad thing. It's giving up something of comfort now for something so much greater in the future. And so, yes, I'm not going to sit here and say everything's perfect. I love this. I feel convicted in this decision every single day, and I never question it because that's a lie. I question it. I have quite a few times where I get down sometimes, especially when I get wrapped up in the world. I want to talk from a vanity perspective. Actually, I did a video recently where I showed Tim and how he's just getting hotter. Like I showed a picture of him, his license, his old license and his new license. And I'm like, this isn't fair. Like he's just getting hotter. And so from a perspective, like will I ever get my body back? Right. I don't even know what that means. And once you have 6 kids, I don't know how I would expect to look the same way I did before having 6 kids. But there's also that too. Like I just want to get in shape and I'm not talking from a health perspective. I'm talking from a vanity perspective. So there's times too where it's like, oh, like I'm never gonna look the way I want to look. But the things I'm emphasizing on, again, they're not health, they're vanity metrics that are worldly. And so so whenever I do get in this spiral of a thought process, you're really good at grounding me with that and helping me keep perspective on what our future is going to look like.
We don't get a lot of me time right now with all the young kids, really is what it is. And, sometimes it's frustrating, right? You want to get something done or you want to exercise, whatever you're trying to do. The other day when I was in the garage exercising, one of the kids came out and he interrupted me.
Our 2-year-old.
Our 2-year-old came out. And at the time, it annoyed me a little bit. But then later I thought, there's going to be a day where I'm going to be able to do that uninterrupted. And, I'm going to look over and that door is not going to open because they're all grown up. And so, yeah, I don't want to stop having, being open to that, right? Because it's amazing. Mm-hmm. So.
Also, I try to hold him off, by the way. People
No, I know you.
No, I just know what people get. Like, why can't you let your man work out?
Yeah.
I know, but it's actually really sweet. And this happens with a lot of the toddlers, especially if I have another baby. I think this actually happens just because they start to realize who both their caretakers are as they get older. And they become very attached to dad during like the 2-year-old phase, very attached. Like if he knows daddy's home, he wants to be with daddy. And so when he knew you were in the garage working out, I really tried to keep him away, but he's tenacious.
He's got a lot of gumption.
I know. He's got, well, and I know he's not the boss, but at the same time, it was just like, I also knew you wouldn't want him. If you're right there, you would want to comfort him. Yeah,
and it's okay. I mean, there will be more time for me later for a lot of that stuff, right? I mean, because they're only young ones. And
you still, and I'm, by no means are we trying to advocate like put your health on the back burner because it is important to work out and eat right and take care of yourself with the amount of kids you have. But it wasn't as if, it was a little interruption into your workout. It wasn't as if you're never working out because of it.
It's that whole saying is like one day is going to be the last day I'm going to mess this up.
The picking up.
They ask you to pick them up or something like that. And you don't know when that day is going to be, right? But
there were some questions that came in when folks knew that you were going to be on the show together. We had you together here. And this was more kind of picking up on the conversation about like men's self-control and just virtue. And I think, and then also women's self-control and virtue in rejecting the sexualization of the culture. But what would you, Tim, and then I want to hear you, Chrissy, from the woman's perspective, for men who have already made a decision, I'm going to reject pornography. Mm-hmm. How can they grow in purity of heart so that they can better love their wife or future wife more purely? And then I'm going to ask you about women who are seeking emotional purity as well as physical purity and how they can love better too. I mean, my guess just from what you've shared so far and what I know of you as a couple is that you love God.
Yeah,
you're trying to serve and love God, and He gives you love to give back to Chrissy.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a big thing is leading in prayer because we are weak. And so it's through Christ that we can do these harder things and leaning on Him during those times. So
it's just leading your family in their faith, I guess, is what it comes down to, whether it's rosaries or even if it's just, a blessing before a meal, something like that. Reminding your children, Jesus loves you. And I guess this is also not answering the question because we're referring to men who
they want to grow deeper.
I guess, if you're a father, you could already be a father at that point too. But yeah, it's and learning more about your faith. This is something that's I'm working on right now because I think I wasted a lot of time, and I could be much more knowledgeable in my faith. But since us seeing the light and becoming more devout, that's part of my to-dos is just to learn more, to help me be a better Catholic. You can be a great Catholic, say your prayers and have a relationship with Jesus, but at this point I also want the knowledge, which I don't know to be a great Catholic, I don't think you have to have the knowledge, but I want it at this point.
You want it's wisdom too. Yeah. I mean, that's really, you are the leader of your family, and together you're obviously responsible for this beautiful souls and each other. Mm-hmm. So we got to learn. We've got to all grow in wisdom formation so that we can be responsible with that gift that we've been given.
And I think it's through that, though, when you learn and you start to learn more about your faith and learn why Christ developed these things the way he did, that's you become even more convicted as you understand more. And I think that's what helped you be more open to life. Like he's analytical, right? He's going to read up, he's going to look, because that was the big thing when we came to this decision. Where does it say it in the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. Where's in the Bible? That's one I get a lot. And so, and that's where obviously as Catholics, we don't believe it's just the Bible, right? Because you can take one scripture from the Bible and interpret it a million different ways, right? So as Catholics, we believe in the church as well. So, but because you're analytical, you're a research guy, you're a book guy, learning more and really trying to understand it is what convicted you more. So if you were struggling with pornography and now you're trying to, combat that, and now you're trying to be a better husband, learning more, why are we rejecting pornography? Why are we rejecting these things? Why is the church's stance on this? And as you understand the why, I promise you'll be more convicted.
It reminds me of did you ever go to Steubenville retreats? Have you been to those?
No, but I've heard about them.
When I was involved with the youth group, we went every year, and they were, for a lot of people, they were really special. But for me, it almost was a little off-putting because I'm more analytical. I struggle with the spiritual side of things, right? Mm-hmm. And during adoration, I see all these people receiving all these charismatic gifts, and I'm sitting there, okay, when's my coming here? And I don't think I was spiritual enough. I wasn't open enough. And I found those retreats to be a little, I supported the youth. A lot of people had great experiences and they left with their hearts on fire. For me, I left kind of the same way I went into it, right? It didn't hit me the same. And being more spiritual is just a struggle I personally have. Seeing things through an analytical lens most of the time, or I want to, where's the proof kind of thing. So, that's another thing I'm just trying to work on is becoming more spiritual.
It's very much the masculine archetype. I think like the steady analytical, as opposed to sort of in the emotional experience. Again, generalizations, of course,
Sure.
But, Chrissy, what do you think for women to pursue chaste love of their husband or their future husband and rejecting really I think it's like almost sexual fantasy is maybe the wrong exact term, but certainly a more fantasy approach to relationships where you sort of objectify the man emotionally and physically potentially, and that be the pitfall for a lot of women.
So this is actually interesting because I love a great romance story, right? And I am all for great rom-coms. And so I want to make that clear because I think you should have a great love story. I mean, it may not unfold that way, but there's nothing wrong with a great love story, right? Where there's passion and you would crawl to the ends of the earth for one of another. And by no means would I want to tell a woman to lower her standards by any means. You should have a man who loves you. People say worship you. And I'm like, well, no, you worship Christ, but yes, who loves you and would fight for you and want to do good by you. Never lower your standards for that. But there's a big difference between that and quite literally unrealistic expectations. So a big comparison I use is I'd be heartbroken I don't know if you ever watched them, but I used to watch the Victoria's Secret fashion shows, right? And so, they were going to be on primetime TV and they come and the epitome of what society would say like a perfect body, right? And you start to, when you learn what their diets are and their workouts, there's no way the average person could do that unless that's their job. And so, but I'd be heartbroken if my husband looked. He was always so good. He would never watch those, by the way. He'd say, and he'd be like, "Oh, they don't hold a candle to you, honey." Like, he's so good because I'd watch them and he'd be in the room, but he'd be working on his computer. But anyways, I'd be heartbroken if.
And this is also pre your conversion too.
Yeah. I would be heartbroken though if I had kids, because I was like, what if like Heidi Klum? Do you remember her? She had kids and she walked one, right? She had a baby and then she ended up walking the Victoria's Secret fashion show and she looked obviously amazing. And again, but that's a very unrealistic expectation. And so if I had a baby, right, and then he was like, well, you have that Victoria's Secret body. That's a very unrealistic expectation. He never would, but that would be an incredibly unrealistic expectation. Now in the world of AI, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's like AI models in Vogue magazine. So now it's not even humanly possible to achieve some of these looks. So I kind of look at some of the content women consume when it comes to men. Are we viewing what our men should be like the way a man might view what a woman should be like in that Victoria's Secret analogy, if that makes sense? So when you, as we talked about earlier, when you have like a romance novel, right? And this guy is just so perfect and so in love with this woman, and you think this is how men should be, all men should be. But in reality, that man was written by a woman with a woman's brain, And so I'm not saying to lower your standards by any means, but be careful. It goes back to that. Be careful of the content you're consuming. Because when I was reading these romance novels, my husband's amazing. I mean, you see me gushing over him. I love him. He's supportive in every way. But there would be nights where I'd be reading my book and he wasn't giving me the attention I wanted. And I'm thinking like, well, this guy's giving this girl this kind of attention. Like, and I would honestly be upset with him. And then it would get in my head like, well, maybe, and I guess it comes down to why was I thinking that way? What was influencing me to think this way? And so I don't know how to say this delicately enough to say where I'm not saying to lower your standards, but make sure the standards are rooted in reality. And that would be my advice to young women is, yes, find a godly man, but understand that just like you, that you have faults, he's going to have them too. And so I've seen women really brush off men quickly. Oh, this was a red flag. This was a red flag. I said, I don't know if that was necessarily a red flag or just he wasn't perfect. Or this expectation for 20-year-old boys to be behaving like maybe a male character in one of these books who's also like 37. And so I get it. I do understand this whole notion of rejecting this idea of like boys will be boys, because what that turned into was like an excuse for the bar to be low, for guys to do whatever they want to women. And I understand that. That's a big thing you hear online. The bar is so low for men, right? And that's not fair for women. The bar's so high. But we have to also realize how we're designed and not expect necessarily a 21-year-old to have it figured out like the 40-year-old male lead that you read about, and that's like how wonderful and wise and everything you are. He was all these wonderful things in his 20s, but he's obviously grown since his 20s. And if I was expecting him to behave this way as a 21-year-old boy, would we have ever gotten together? And so, definitely, again, I can't emphasize this enough. No, not lower your standards, but make sure they're rooted in reality. And we're giving grace to one another as well. If he's a jerk to you, you should not be with a jerk. But if he laughed at a joke that may have been a little inappropriate, I don't know. It's just
be understanding and see the whole person.
And I do think there's a culture of like men versus women. And it's like, we kind of don't want them to get together. I think it's very hard to date in this day and age. If you think about, I would say, it's really hard to meet people too, so it's hard. So it's easy for me to say get off the dating apps, but I really don't know how people meet one another.
Except for Sacred Spark. the new dating app that I highly recommend. There's a wait list. It's not out yet, but Sacred Spark is what it's called.
But another thing is that's a very objectifying. You're window shopping people.
Right. Well, that's Sacred Spark is going to do it differently, where they have like videos where people are introducing themselves. So instead of you don't get to just swipe a picture.
Okay.
You have to interact with someone actually explaining, hey, this is a little bit about myself. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to create a more human approach to values-based, faith-based dating, Catholic dating.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yeah. So I think there's also, this culture of the dating apps is it's hard. I really do empathize with it because especially the younger generation, they really got screwed over with the pandemic in terms of just their view of the world, the closures, the way they weren't allowed, at least here in California, weren't allowed to go to school, interact with each other in very formative years. So I have a lot of sympathy for how they're navigating the world in relationships with one another. And again, they're also in this massive overconsumption of content too. So you go on TikTok and you're going to hear all this advice like 6 red flags in a guy. And, you know, if he's only taking you to coffee on that first day, he's not taking you to dinner, he's out. And to me, I'm like, because the whole notion is like, men can't be cheap. We do a lot. And it's like, okay, but he doesn't know yet. What's wrong with I personally would rather meet for coffee. So the pressure's off of me as well.
Give me that ice cream cone.
Yeah, meet for ice cream. But this whole, and there's another notion too, that's like, he needs to be, and it's again, rooted in vanity, and it's rooted in very worldly, it's rooted in the world and vanity, where it's like, oh, he has to be at least 6'1" and he has to make this kind of money. And I'm like, are you looking for a 40-year-old man, or are you looking for someone your age? Like,
and by the way, a lot of those men that are 40 have got married when they were 25 to a woman that embraced them and loved them for who they were and helped build that with them.
And this is where because I really love that. I love that we got married young, because as you can see, we grew together. And I think it's really special. And we learned and navigated the world together because we got together so young. And so I'm not against people getting married young, but I don't want to have this encouraging thing like, oh, well, he's really broken, but you guys will be able to fix each other. So it's a really
a lot of nuance.
It's a tightrope that I have a hard time giving advice in, because there is a lot of nuance with it.
You've been out of the game for a while too.
I've been out of the game since like pretty much I was like 19 years old.
So what is up next for you two?
Oh,
he's hoping for more babies.
Oh,
well, I'm not that I'm not hoping for more babies, but I guess more babies. Sorry, you can answer that one.
Well, I would love more babies. Yeah. Whenever you're ready.
We'll see. Well, I mean, it's whatever the Lord says already. I'm actually,
As of now, I'm going to, I'm going to focus on the family. I'm kind of taking some time off from work. Help Chrissy with whatever she needs help with her platform. And then I will be spending time homeschooling the kids as well, which I'm really looking forward to that, and getting a little more involved in that.
Yeah, I would love to have you on more. I think it would be beneficial to hear more of what you have to say.
You've gotten a lot of feedback, Chrissy, and you too, Tim, through Chrissy. I know it's through her page mostly, but just of people who have been really impacted by the content that you create. I know the show that we did touched a lot of people. What have been some of those things that you've heard and you've heard as well, Tim, and how has that sort of inspired you to want to do this more together as a couple?
The fact that you're even here is like kind of crazy. If you told me like last year that you'd be coming and doing a podcast with me, I mean, he doesn't even have a single social media.
I have well, never mind. I don't have a social media.
Yeah, you took it down.
I got rid of LinkedIn.
It's gone. Okay.
I guess you're technically on X because you
real name or fake name?
It's just my real name. Well, I might be changing it after this, but
you say it with your chest, but you don't tweet. I don't know what it's called on X now. Is it called tweets? But you don't post. Yeah. Well, you follow a lot of news and stuff on X.
News and stuff.
That's really what it is. It's like news and programming stuff. Mm-hmm. It's not.
There's a lot of good Catholic content on there.
Oh, yeah, a lot of Catholic content.
There's also some bad Catholic content on there.
I think that's what hurt the most is when you saw a lot of the Catholic Christian content creators coming after Lila and I the way they did.
Yeah.
That's what
only
hurt.
some, like, this is the thing. The loud ones are the most, there's like the minority can be the most vicious, but the majority is very supportive. Yes. I mean, really, objectively speaking, it was the majority that were very, it was just like people that I think are trying to build brands on controversy, try to make something more controversial than it is for the sake of creating a clapback, effectively.
There was one person who, he doesn't have a following or anything, but he posted something. I commented, I said, I don't like it. And then he made a reference that he actually is familiar with us, and he is in one of our communities in San Diego.
But he knew people who went to our parish, and then he went off saying that he knows about us. Yeah,
and that we're not very good parents. Things along those lines, and that Chrissy should shut down her account. And then so I DM'd him and I asked him to take it down. I asked him, who do you know, or why would you say this? And he's like, well, I try not to engage in gossip, but I did hear it.
How?
But then he posted it online.
That's so wrong.
That one.
That shook us up a bit because he was in the community. But I brought that up to our priest, who used to be a lawyer. And he's like, that's defamation. Who is this guy?
Yeah, it's fine. He deleted the comment.
Well, you also know, like, that's not someone who's safe to be friends with, unfortunately.
And I was kind to him about it too. I was like, well, have a lot of the same interests. Maybe we can actually get to know each other, and then you won't have to judge my family this way. So that one.
We don't need to talk about that guy.
There's probably people, in our communities, our local communities, that don't like our lifestyle, and that's just going to be part of it too. And that's the whole counterculture thing that I think you mentioned before. So
going back to the online controversy, where there was a pastor from a megachurch and jumping on the viral bandwagon. So he did it like 2 weeks after everything kind of went crazy.
I don't think I saw this one.
And he took the clip, said, men don't need sex. Basically, he was saying, yeah, you're right. He was saying, you're right. Like, you don't need it the way you need food, water, shelter. But how would women feel if they said you don't need emotional intimacy? And this was a big, I don't know if you saw this.
I saw that.
Where people were saying, well, how would women feel if you don't need emotional intimacy? It's like, you, my man, need emotional intimacy too. What do you think? You just need sex? Is that why you married your wife? Like, what are you talking about? Like, women are the only one who want emotional intimacy. And so I didn't even have to do any digging on this guy. He said what he said, and people were sending it to me. And then they said, don't pay this guy any mind, because he's known for saying like pretty crazy things. And all I did was I Googled his name, and he had a sermon, and this just kind of goes back to the women feeling the need to serve their men sexually, like kind of like a sex object. He had this a sermon. This wasn't a joke in a bar. This wasn't a joke in the locker room. This wasn't just in some passing by. This was in his sermon where he's leading his flock, and that he fought out and wrote out the week ahead. And he says, okay, I have a gold nugget piece of advice I got to you. I got from a mentor of mine. This one's, I'm going to speak to the gentleman at first. When you're about to get married, your wife, your fiance, has been planning this day her whole life. She's got the bridal magazines.
Oh, I've heard this.
Yes, she puts the veil over her head and pretend. So when it comes to her wedding day, not theirs, hers. When it comes to her wedding day, you're going to stand where she tells you to stand. You're going to wear what she tells you to wear, and you're going to do what she tells you to do.
I know. Okay? So this is very dehumanizing for both people, what you're about to say.
And then he goes, can I get an amen? And everyone's like, amen. And he goes, okay, now ladies, when it comes to his wedding night, you're going to stand where he tells you to stand, do what he tells you to do, and wear what he tells you to wear, and you're going to make him the happiest man in the world. And once I was like, okay, why am I even bothering with this guy? But it was really heartbreaking to hear that when it was his wedding night, not theirs, not a unit
her wedding day,
and her wedding
instead of it's theirs together.
Yeah,
because I agree. It's heartbreaking to put people in boxes to say men just need and want sex all day long. Women just need to want emotional intimacy all day long, and you're like trading those things to get the favor from the other.
Transactional.
Does he not have a daughter? I don't know. When I heard that, I was like, I would never tell that joke.
It's dark.
It's just dark. It's
at church.
Yeah.
To all the men and the women in his congregation.
At church, at Megachurch.
Yeah.
And so it was, and here's the thing. I have heard some of the other things he has said, and he's not wrong in some of these other things. So that's the problem. And we're seeing this a lot, especially in the red pillars or whatever, is like you'll get these really great kernels of truth. And especially where we live in a society where the pendulum swung so far.
Yes.
So now people want to get it back, right? And so they'll say, men shouldn't watch porn. Yes. Men, we need to do better to provide. Yes. And then and then you go. And then it's like, but women, you need to be doing this all the time, serving your men in this way every single time. And it goes to another extreme. Yeah. And so,
I think that their argument is, there are no standards in place for women. Women just get to do whatever the heck they want. And it's like, no, there are. Mm-hmm. We're called to be open to life. We're called to be welcoming and nurturing new life. We're called to love and respect our husbands. And we're called to, build this beautiful family with them and serve in every physical way and emotional way possible. I mean, the services that we give as women, especially as mothers, is really to the point of death even. Mm-hmm. They say the closest thing you get to death sometimes is labor and delivery. Yeah. I mean, it's just not to scare people because it's natural and your body knows what to do, but it is very intense and you're giving all of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So hearing that, and I had women arguing with me because they really like him. And so, but then I said, this is the view of sex that we're having though. And this whole, that it's very transactional. And that was what was very upsetting. And so I kind of clapped back at him, but I had women being like, I think this is very difficult because you've been raised in the Catholic faith where this is how we view intimacy. But in a lot of these non-denominational Protestant religions, this is kind of how they're viewing it. And
It's
a
like
lot of people,
the woman sort of sees herself as a sex object.
Kind
and she
of.
almost like owns it for fun. Like, well, I'll just let, like, it's all about, and then he just like meets my emotional needs over here.
Yeah,
And instead
it's-
of like, let's become one flesh and become whole humans, where I enjoy sex too. Sex is beautiful. And he enjoys emotional intimacy too. It's beautiful. And we're all, fully whole as humans.
and I shouldn't say everyone, because when I did post that, I said, is this the norm in a lot of other churches? And a lot of women said, no, this is not the norm. He shouldn't have said that. So I don't want to
He's
say
more of
that's-
a fundamentalist, I think.
I don't want to say
a
that's
lone
the norm.
ranger.
But to me, and I think to you too, where it made us more established in our Catholic faith, was it wasn't up for us for interpretation of what some of this stuff meant.
Yeah. I just have to say, I'm incredibly grateful for you both being willing to jump into the ring, so to speak, and share about your life, about your love, about your family, because this is how today's culture is made and how people are being impacted. And I do think, we live our quiet lives and we just do our best, but media is incredibly powerful. It should be used. We should be talking about things that are difficult to talk about. We should be sharing about our lives, obviously, as you believe is appropriate. I know you don't share your kids' names. You try to avoid faces a lot, but I just want to commend you both for being willing to do that. And Chrissy, I know you've already been in the ring doing it, but Tim, thank you
Sure,
for being willing to step in. I just think it's game changing.
Yeah. I'm
And a blessing.
very proud of Chrissy. And seeing those comments about people who are now open to life or reconsidering their faith, becoming growing deeper in their faith, things like that. That makes, those mean comments online worthwhile, or, we can tolerate that if it's bringing people back.
That was one. I didn't answer your question. So some of the feedback was, I've got incredible feedback, and obviously it's the Holy Spirit just using me to spread His word. But people saying, I never would have viewed sex that way until you guys spoke about it. Another one was being open to having more kids. I've gotten so many of those where I always thought I was done until I started following your page. That was a huge one. And then I've gotten messages from husbands, and I've gotten approached in person by husbands, and all along the same sentiment of, you express things in a way I was able to understand that I think my wife's been trying to tell me, but she didn't have the words to articulate it. And the wives, and then the ones I've met in person, the wife would be there. She'd go, yes, this is the way I was trying to explain things to my husband, but I couldn't figure out the words to use. So that's been amazing. That's been incredible and all this. And because I've
And we're talking hundreds, and I
Yes.
saw probably thousands
Yes.
overall of comments and messages. You were getting DM'd. I get approached sometimes at the park or the
Yes.
grocery store, but that one particular show we did, and your story, I think there was something special the Holy Spirit is doing.
Absolutely. And so I told you earlier, I had to go, I homeschool. So we go to a co-op where there's a bunch of other homeschool families, and I was getting recognized left and right. And from that particular episode, which I thought was just amazing, and it does make it worth it. And and when I was going through the online drama, a lot of my community reached out, and it's just like, this is, you're doing what God wants you to do, because it's not going to come easy. You think you're going to get a bunch of praise and everyone's just going to love what you have to say? I'm not by any means a very large influencer, but I do have a platform, and I don't have that platform on my own. It's God-given, truly, and I do feel being used by God to do His will. And maybe not every piece of content's gonna be, because we've talked about this too, where I'm not necessarily a Christian Catholic content creator. I'm just a mom living my life and sharing it with you. And obviously my faith is a big part of that. But doing social media, doing what you do, right? People can make the argument, be home with your kids. That's a big one, right? Why aren't you just home with your kids? But it's using your gifts to, what was I said? You worded it really well on the podcast that you just recently did.
And whether it's using your gifts as a mother in directly loving your kids, or using your gifts in order to love the community, it's all in the end service of others and developing your talents. I'm excited to see everything you are going to create together. The children, the future children, as well as the content. Most importantly, the children. But thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for being willing to do this, Tim, too. I know it's like getting out of the usual zone of your professional work, but it's a very, I think, incredible witness that you are. So thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. I always love talking to you.
And then where can people find the Hortons online?
Well, Tim likes to, not
Tim's Twitter.
I don't know if he likes
what is it? Yeah, everybody knows.
Tim's like, don't direct them there. Tim, I think going back to that, the feedback has made you more willing to want to come on to my channels.
I'll come on to your channels, sure.
Yeah.
And
That's fine.
Thanks.
And the show,
Yes.
exactly.
So yes, you can find me and appearances from my husband.
Special guest experiences.
Yeah, special guest. I'm Chrissy Horton, CHRISSY Horton, on all platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or you can search by my handle, Horton Lane.
I love it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Lila Rose Show with Tim and Chrissy Horton. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Make sure you're subscribed. Thank you so much to everyone who is subscribing, whether you're on podcast app or here on YouTube, so that you never miss a future episode. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time. A huge thank you to our partner, EWTN, the largest religious broadcaster in the entire world. EWTN is reaching millions of people every single day with the beautiful truth of the gospel. You can watch new episodes of The Lila Rose Show 24 hours before they hit podcast app over at EWTN.com/on-demand.